Welcome to this webinar chat, the first one in a series that we are kicking off today. We aim to address topics that are professionally relevant for the tech community. And this series is a build-up to the BITOSA Global Conclave, which will be held in the city of Bangalore on December 1st this year. This event is designed by the tech professionals for tech professionals. So arguably the only event in India that addresses the opportunities and challenges that these new technologies present for the tech community. So this year's conclave theme is sharing economy and how it's reshaping how we live, work, and play. So back to the chat itself, the webinar itself. Our first guest today to kick off the series is Himanshu Nautiyal, co-founder and CEO of Euler Systems. It's a Silicon Valley firm that helps businesses use AI and data science to optimize their digital strategies and operations. Himanshu has previously run a data research group at Yahoo, the AI group at eGain that made a very successful $2 billion IPO. By training, he has a BTech in computer science from IIT Delhi, where his computer vision project won the Best Project Award, and then an MS from computer science from the University of Washington in Seattle, and an MBA from IIM Bangalore, the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. So, welcome, Himanshu, to the webinar.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Himanshu, you are in London today, and I'm in San Francisco, and we are being joined today by a large number of participants from India, and quite a few from other geographies and time zones as well. So welcome, everyone. Some housekeeping announcements for everyone. This chat is scheduled for about 20 minutes, followed by some time for audience question and answers. All attendees will remain on mute for the entire duration of this webinar. Hence, you're requested to send in your questions that you have for Himanshu using the Q&A feature that you see on Zoom. Time permitting, I will try my best to ask each one of your questions, or I may even club a few questions if they are very close to each other. As always, we welcome your feedback to help us improve this event. We will be reaching out to you after the event for your feedback. And I believe there will be a recording of this event as well, which we will be putting it out in the future. So without further ado, let me get started. Himanshu, maybe you may want to talk a little bit about yourself before we actually get into the questions. Because my first question really is about how do you see AI impacting our daily lives? But if you could also introduce yourself a little bit more than what I have done, and what gets you, what got you into this field of AI ultimately, that would be nice for our attendees.
First of all, thank you for having me. What I find with AI is that it requires a lot of explanation about what is possible, how to do it, how to get the data, how to get the people trained, and all of that. So I appreciate all opportunities to speak about AI. In terms of my own journey, I am a mathematician by DNA and inclination till the age of 15. So I was looking really for areas where I could apply that set of inclinations and skills in a commercially, reasonably lucrative fashion. So something that I first thought of, which was mathematics or theoretical computer science, were too abstract at that time, and the number of opportunities for application were lower. So AI is what I chose as my specialization during my bachelor's. I had the good opportunity at that time, even though things were not quite as white hot as they are right now for AI. I got the opportunity to lead an AI group at eGain, which was a hot star in the field of customer care technology. We had a email itself was a new channel for the applications to handle the email, to provide threading, to provide skill-based routing to the right agent, were all challenges. So the initial cut of the application got us there. Then the number of tickets got too large, so people said, oh, we need some way to manage how we set up the system. So we built a rules engine. Then the rules got too large, so we said, just understanding what is going on is difficult. Can we visualize the flowchart that the tickets are going through? So we did that. And then even the flowchart got too complex. So we said, now we finally have to do something that handles the problem, doesn't necessarily explain it completely always, but handles it in 80% of the cases. So that's how we got to AI, which luckily I was interested and trained in already. So that's when I realized the power. And that's also something that I see continually in terms of how people arrive at AI as the answer to their problems. There are some people who have AI ingrained in their DNA. So the Fangams, the Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Google, they will look at AI first before they do anything else. But for a lot of the other people, AI is not the first answer. They, for example, in BPO or RPO, the first thing tried was cheaper labor, cheaper, larger numbers of labor. When that turns out to be too complicated, then people are looking at the more RPA type of the more AI type of solutions. So that's been kind of my journey. Beyond eGain, then I worked for a company called Closed Loop, where I did their data platforms. Not quite an interesting exit like Yahoo, but a lot to learn there. Like eGain, I'm sorry, but a lot to learn there. The next step was Yahoo, where I led the data science group, learned a lot about just managing large amounts of data and the low-hanging fruit that is available on a large platform. There were, we can go into examples, but there were lots of things where with 1 week of analysis, you could make a 20 million annual revenue, recurring revenue difference to the company. So that was very exciting. From that point, I thought I'd learned enough about data, was looking for kind of the next thing to do. Had done my MBA in the 2 years after the startup that I did after Yahoo, and then moved into banking, where we looked for applications of data. So I built structured indices, traded exotics, did all of that for 5 years. By the time we had gotten embedded in London, this was home. And then I and 3 other ex-colleagues and batchmates and people that I had been close to for a long time, we started off Euler. So that's the genesis of Euler. AI was the natural thing for us to do because we had done large-scale applications. We had done all kinds of things. But AI was the hottest application of those in the most general, most interesting way possible. So that's my answer to my trajectory. In terms of how AI is going to affect things, I was actually trying to be rigorous about this, and I looked at an industry classification. I said, let's find an industry that AI will not change. And I looked at energy, I looked at transportation, I looked at construction, I looked at pretty much anything you can think of, healthcare. There is nothing that there is not already at least one unicorn in that area, which is focusing primarily on AI or large amounts of data suitably managed. They will eventually get to AI also. So that's my simple answer. Everything is going to be affected by AI. AI, it's not that interesting of an answer because AI is a very broad term. There are too many things going on here, right? In the interest of time, you will have to guide me on time because I can keep speaking on this. So very simply, I would say there are the personal benefits that are going to happen. Life is going to get more convenient. You will be able to do cashierless checkout. There is a company that a friend of mine is doing, which will allow the Amazon Go type capabilities to be used by other retailers. There is facial recognition that's popping up all over China. There is a universal credit score, which means that you will be able to walk into a store. Obviously, you can buy the merchandise. People can look up your accounts, and all of that will happen smoothly. But also, you can take a loan. You can, in China, there are stores enabled by Alibaba that allow you to walk in, just show your face, have your universal score be looked up, and take a car out for a test drive. Essentially, they're loaning you a car based on just 5 seconds with them. So that's the personal convenience. This is short-term convenience, I would say. There is the long-term convenience, which is what happens all through life. What are our life stages? What are the decisions we make in terms of, the places we go to school, the people we partner with in various ways, professionally and personally, the jobs we do, the geographies we choose to live in, the medical issues we may face, and AI or all of the techniques that come under that wide remit will help us make better choices. Already, I hear that 30% of the marriages in the US are in some shape or form happening on an online platform, which heavily uses AI to do the initial matching of people. So that's a very, it's scary and it's impressive. People are going to be making choices of profession that right now are guided by essentially their immediate vicinity. I'm sure there are a lot of people who were equally mathematically inclined, but somebody told them, this is not a great field. This doesn't make money just because they were born in India. The same thing, if you were born in the US, close to New York, somebody would tell you, you can go to Wall Street, you can make money there. So these information asymmetries will go away with AI because AI will guide people towards their choice of careers. Many problems, obviously, there's a lot of effort already going on in terms of predicting the big four problem diseases, the heart attacks, the cancers, the strokes, and Alzheimer's. The bad news is that it has taken this long. The good news is that there is so much data available in the human body. We will make enormous progress within 5 or 10 years on these fronts. That is the personal good news. The macro news is that a lot of decisions in terms of policy making, in terms of interest rate setting, in terms of figuring out what inflation rates are going to become much easier. To give you an example, Argentina was reporting inflation rates that were not credible to anybody that was following it. And people were able to browse to basically crawl all the retail stores there and be able to build an index separate from the government index that was a more accurate predictor. So that sort of thing is now becoming possible. So at a personal level, at a macroeconomic level, at a producer level, everything is going to be affected in positive ways and in negative ways. I'm sure there's a lot of noise about the negative stuff also.
Awesome. Himanshu, I think these are fantastic examples, and these are just the tip of the iceberg, as you said. I know there's scarier examples and more profound examples of how AI is going to touch everything. And what you say is that rather than asking the question of what is AI going to impact, I think a more pertinent question is to ask is what AI is not going to impact. So that's a big takeaway for me. But, in terms of technologies and the readiness of technology where we are today, what do you think? Are we in early stages, and therefore what is really possible in the near future, like today and over the next few years, in terms of where the technology readiness is?
That's a very interesting question. I think that is what most executives are primarily concerned about, to the extent that Andrew Ng, who's one of the leaders in this space, he actually wrote an HBR article on that topic. What can AI do and not do? And his to compress that entire article into one thought, what he's saying is that there are actions that humans can do very well within a minute. And any of those actions, for example, recognizing whether something is a car or a wall, or recognizing that something is an animal, recognizing a person, recognizing their speech, the language, understanding language, those things, whatever a human can do in 1 minute, will be or have already been done quite well by AI. Anything that requires more than a minute of a human's thought will probably not be done very quickly. So that's the short answer to what is possible. It is surprising that such a simple lens gives you pretty much all areas that are currently being attacked by AI practitioners. So driverless cars, for example, driving takes more than a minute to learn, and we are not able to solve that problem perfectly yet, although we have made, obviously, huge strides. Speech recognition, understanding what somebody is saying, does take a minute. Translation takes just a minute for the expert translators. And those things we are able to do very well now with the deep learning models and with the advances in hardware and so on. So that, I would say, is the crucial test. Whatever human can do in a minute, whatever an expert human can do in a minute, and where the expert human is too costly to be deployed in large numbers, is where we would look for large benefits from using AI.
Cool. I think that's a good thumb rule to use terms of what AI is ready to disrupt today, as opposed to what it can potentially disrupt in the future. Now, having said that, as I was researching for this webinar, I was going through, the definitions of AI and what components of AI are there. It looks like there's a whole bunch of sub areas, if you will, within them, which relate to decision making or vision and so on. Among these, we hear a lot about machine learning these days in terms of actual applications and actual skills which are getting advertised. So, to a layman, to somebody who's not very close to the technology, is machine learning the first big area, a sub area within artificial intelligence, which is getting attention, or which is getting where the applications are today?
I think that's a very fair assessment. For people who have learned AI the hard way, which is from the textbooks, in courses, as part of a larger degree, machine learning is a set of chapters in basically the Russell Norvig book. There are other chapters which refer to topics that either have not made a mark yet, or have made a mark in such a large fashion that nobody thinks of them as AI. So search, for example, search itself is AI, and particularly the way that Google did it is AI. But they did it in 1995, and so nobody says they were an AI company, but they were the biggest AI company already at that point. There is computer vision, which was treated as a separate topic, and the sort of people that went into computer vision focused on that and nothing else. Although the techniques used there are machine learning techniques, but there is so much that is domain specific in terms of, for example, trying to build models about objects. So the models could be sensitive to the type of object. If you're modeling animals, machine learning is definitely an area where we're seeing the big successes, which often are in areas that meet that 1 minute of human kind of test.
Okay. All right.
So this is likely to be, for somebody looking for quick wins, this is likely to be the best area to start off with. I wouldn't recommend computer vision, for example.
Okay. And we know why. Well, Himanshu, I think in your experience over the last few years that you and the team has been working at Euler, there have been, what are those some of those areas where you've been called upon to offer your solutions? If you could give us a sense of what those areas are, and that might give our attendees and our audience some sense of where the opportunities today are. I know you guys work for businesses and enterprises, so we'll bring in that flavor as well for the audience.
So my short thesis of why we are doing it for enterprises is that you can either do the capabilities for your own asset, which is what the Fangams are already doing, or you can make it available to the large numbers of enterprises who need the same capabilities as Google, but have either not the financial muscle, or maybe are simply located in places where they will not get access to the same talent that Google can. Google has Stanford in their backyard, right? So, and they've already made the name. They're a desirable employer for that kind of person. There are a lot of people that would be desirable employers, but they just haven't spent the time on building that brand. So we think there is an arbitrage market to be exploited, and we are hoping to do that. In terms of where we have been called specifically, so far I think that has been constrained not by our choice or by our capability. We, I think, can attack pretty much 80% of the problems that are out there. We are a small team, but we can build up as the opportunities arise. What the selection filter has been really is time to financial outcomes for the clients. So e-commerce has been obviously the biggest area, because there the asset is set up. You simply have to increase yield or reduce cost for the asset. Reduction in cost, this is a general philosophy. Reduction in cost is not that important for e-commerce for various reasons. Increase in yield is very important. So reducing churn, increasing conversions, doing better recommendations, getting people to buy more of the same recommendations. All of these questions are very important and very clearly front and center in executives' mindsets. So those are opportunities that we have been easily able to make our case, ask for a 1-month trial, and been able to prove very well given our past experience. Other places, so customer care, the stuff that me and Anurag did at eGain has been an obvious win also, because again, for the last 3 or 4 years, people have been talking about RPA, people have been talking about large numbers of not super skilled people trying to answer questions from a large base of questioners who themselves are not super skilled in whatever they're talking about. I'm not saying that there's not skilled in a technological sense. It's just that somebody who's talking about problems in a car may not be able to describe things in a technical enough fashion for a technical person to be able to answer them. So AI has been applied to these sorts of domains and contexts, and we have been called upon to apply AI to similar domains and contexts, basically in customer care. Other problems just came our way because they were simply pressing. Revenue management at hotels, for example, for any hotel, particularly hotels in some geographies, let's say India, for example, a lot of the people that poured money into hotel construction did that just at the end of the last cycle. They invested a lot, bought a lot of assets, or invested into creating assets at the height of prices. And post-crash or post-slowdowns, they have not been able to monetize them to quite the same degree as their forecasts implied. So they have looked for pretty much everything that they can throw at that problem. And AI or Euler was one of those approaches. And we learned some things along the way and were able to make a good case there too. I mean, I can keep talking about other situations that have come our way, but customer care, revenue management, increasing yield on e-commerce type of assets, B2C assets of all kinds, these have been good areas for us.
That sounds about right, because in my experience as somebody who's worked in the area of application of technology, we see there is always a phase lag in terms of where the technology is and where business would like to apply it today. And there's good reasons for that. One, of course, the maturity of technology, which they are very, very concerned about because they are running real businesses. Second, there has to be a business case for application of any technology into business systems. So by the time you filter these two criterias, you have a phase lag in terms of application. And I think it's important, and by the way, we are running out of time here, so I just a shout out to all the attendees. We have several attendees right now, that if you do have a question, please use the Q&A feature on your Zoom panel to send in your question, and I will ask. I've already got a couple of questions which have come in, but if you have more, then send them in. We'll be closing very soon now. So just continuing that, yes, the application of technology is always slightly behind where the readiness of technology is. But it is very important to, I think, all of us, and especially this group, is because a lot of us are actually building careers around and hoping to shape our careers around the future of where AI is going to lead us. Would you advise, and is there any specific advice that you have for tech professionals who are building skills and honing their skills, or even reskilling themselves, of areas that they should look at today in terms of technology areas that they should look at today, which will help them sort of enhance their careers and get better jobs going forward?
So very tactically, I would say they should look for the things before they go for the hard route that I talked about. So eventually, at some point, read Russell Norvig, but before that, do the courses on Udacity, the courses on Fast.ai, or the primer on A16Z. these are the technical issues. Once you have some experience with just the basic theory, then I would recommend stopping reading all blogs about the impact of AI, because that is not what will help you in your career at all, unless you're a thought leader of some sort. Go out and get your hands dirty. Now, getting your hands dirty requires a lot of data. Most organizations, unfortunately, do not have too much data. Or if they have data, there might be lots of constraints on who can access it and what they can use it for. So find an employer or a setting that gives you access to lots of data. And what is lots of data? I think at least 10,000 rows that arrive on a daily basis, or at least millions of rows over time. If you don't have that kind of data, then also, I mean, you can still do something with it, but you won't be an AI guy most likely. You can still be a data scientist. There are still approaches that can lead to lots of rewards. And I've been a data scientist myself, so no disrespect there. It is also interesting. It is another one of the facets of the same kind of career progression. Last bit I would say is just sensitize yourself to data. You're not going to be, as AI practitioners, you will not be just doers of things that are laid out by other people. You will be deciding the things themselves. You are on the control side, you're not on the data side. So what I mean by that is often a lot of the AI projects AI or even data science projects result in a lot of search down a very deep and very broad tree. One has to learn, this is something that I had to shape myself for. One has to learn, make a lot of experiments and quickly discard and prune the unpromising areas and not be frustrated by that, because the results when they come are usually quite spectacular.
Awesome. Okay, so thanks a lot. We'll just sort of take a pause here, and I've got plenty of questions. I'm just browsing through them right now. Yeah. So let me get started with the first question here, which is from Nitish Anand. Not sure where he's from, but he's asked, first of all, he's said it's a brilliant session, Himanshu, and he's asked specifically about Azure Cloud. He said, if an Azure Cloud architect would like to delve into AI ML, what are the best resources to start with? I don't know if that's too specific or if that's something that you want to take.
I think it may not be interesting to the entire audience. I'm happy to talk to him separately.
Okay.
We can. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, this one is from somebody who's still in college, second year computer science. And he said, I've done courses in AI and ML, followed by data science. This is Nitesh Bhargav, by the way. I also have done 4 projects in machine learning. Now, what should I do to get a good job in the field of AI, specifically in natural language processing and text mining?
I would say go on the data science competitions and the AI competitions that people like Kaggle are doing, and there are several platforms that you can go to. They make, so not only the competitions, but also the data that they make available is interesting, because you will typically not have access to that kind of data in your college project or any project that a company will give you from their own data. So Kaggle is a good resource. I'm sure there are more of that form. Go out on those platforms and experiment with the data that they have out there. If not, there are surprising organizations that have lots of data. For example, a lot of the Indian institutes of, for example, agricultural research or transportation research will have these millions of rows of data accumulated over time, or tens of thousands coming per day, in terms of weather, in terms of soil, in terms of crop patterns, in terms of traffic patterns. Just go out and get that data and try to come up with something. Don't look for results. Don't look for them to, admire you or clap for you or pay you. Just work with it. It'll pay eventually.
Awesome, thanks. And I think there's one interesting question which I don't know whether you need to answer this, but it says, what's the oldest age of the person working in AI? Well, I was just researching and I found that John McCarthy coined this word in 1956 in Stanford. So the oldest age can be pretty old. And the other example which was given was, most people don't realize that autopilot in modern commercial aircrafts actually are one of the earliest applications of AI. So the oldest age could be very, very old. We just there is a whole resurgence around AI, rather than this being a very new field. The field is not very new; it's been in development for several decades. But the one which is interesting here is, is there regulations that you are aware of, or have you been hearing things about governments trying to clamp down on AI and limiting the applications of AI? And do you have any view on that?
I think this whole fear that, for example, Elon Musk subscribes to is quite overblown for somebody who's been working in the trenches. And I may be, constrained by my history, but AI has not progressed to really anything. That is what you will constantly hear from the Kaifulis and the Andrew Ng's and the Warren Zionis and the people that have been doing AI for the last 20 years. Nothing has really happened yet. All we have done is being able to classify images, being able to drive cars in 90% of situations, while in the rest of the 10% of the situations things can go horribly wrong. Things work on planes because planes are mostly separate from all other planes by many miles for long periods of time. Applying the same technology for trucks is much harder. So yeah, those constraints and issues are important, but they are not important to the practitioner. They are important for regulators, and I'm sure some people in this audience will eventually become AI regulators. That's not a job that exists yet, and hopefully will not for some time till AI actually advances to the point that it is of some threat. I mean, GMOs and toxic financial products and the use of insecticides and pesticides, and there are at least 100 factors that are more important than dangerous.
Every technology has the negative side. So now this is the very last question. We have to close after this. You've probably got just a minute if you can sort of address this. Padmini Gupta asks, how should firms make do it yourself versus engage Euler systems? So when does a company do things themselves, and when should they call a company like you in? Do you have any advice on that?
Right. So I would say you should have a lot of data. You should be already feeling overwhelmed in terms of knowing that there is potential and not being able to extract that potential before you talk to a specialist like us. A small firm, I would advise that they, like everything else, they do everything themselves. They do AI also themselves, and they do data.
We will also be open if there are other questions to please do send it to us, and we will play it back with Himanshu and he will answer them going forward. It looks like it was just getting warmed up, but we have to stick to our time constraints, so we'll sort of keep it there. But please remember, we will have a much broader discussion around this at the event on December 1st in Bangalore, the BITOSA Global Conclave. Please sort of block your calendars for that. And Himanshu, I'll take this opportunity once again to invite you to that event as well. As you can tell, there's a lot of interest in that.
Would love to see everybody there.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. We'll sort of stop at this point in time because of time constraints. It was lovely having everyone here. It was great to have San Francisco, London, India, and many other parts of the world logged in at the same time. We will be announcing our next webinar chat very soon. Thank you. Thanks for engaging with us. Thanks, Himanshu.